Memphis, 1955. The spotlight was hot, the crowd was ready, and Elvis Presley was about to make a choice that would ripple through history. What happened that night at the Overton Park Shell wasn't in any biography, wasn't captured by any camera, and for decades, only a handful of people knew the truth. But those who were there, the musicians, the stagehands, the young man who would become the king, they never forgot. Because sometimes 6 words are all it takes to draw a line in the sand. And sometimes that line costs you everything you thought you wanted. Elvis Presley's hands were shaking, but not from fear. At 20 years old, he'd already tasted something most men never would. The electric thrill of a crowd that wanted him. Wanted what he had. That voice, that movement, that thing he did that made teenage girls scream and their mothers clutch their pearls. Sam Phillips at Sun Records had told him 3 months ago, "Boy, you got something special. Don't let nobody take it from you." And Elvis had believed him. Why wouldn't he? The phone was ringing off the hook. Radio stations from Louisiana to Arkansas were playing "That's All Right." The girls were showing up in numbers that scared the local police. Elvis Presley wasn't famous yet, not really, but he could see it coming like a freight train on clear tracks. Tonight was supposed to be different. The Overton Park Shell was the biggest venue he'd played. 1,400 seats. A real stage with real lights. The promoter, a sharp-dressed man named Clayton Merriweather, had promised him top billing. "You're gonna be a star, son," Merriweather had said, counting bills with manicured fingers. Just you wait. Elvis had arrived early, like he always did. His mama had taught him that punctuality was respect, and respect was everything. He'd parked his daddy's beat-up truck around back, carrying his guitar case like it held the crown jewels. Inside, the venue smelled like sawdust and possibilities. That's when he saw them at the back entrance. 3 men in sharp suits, instrument cases in hand, standing in the Memphis heat, while Clayton Merriweather blocked the door like a wall. "I don't care what the contract says," Merriweather was saying, his voice low but hard. "You boys know the rules. There's a side entrance for coloreds." "You ain't coming through this door." Elvis recognized them immediately. The tall one was James "Sweet" Williams, a piano player whose reputation preceded him like gospel. The man with the horn case was Marcus Reed, who could make a trumpet cry like a newborn baby. The third, younger, nervous, was Thomas Clay, the drummer everyone said had hands blessed by rhythm itself. They were his backing band for tonight, the musicians Sam Phillips had personally recommended. "Best in the business," Sam had said. "They'll make you sound like you're worth a damn." Elvis stopped walking. His guitar case suddenly felt heavy. "Mr. Merriweather," Sweet Williams said, his voice careful and measured, "we're the backing band. We're supposed to—" "I know who you are," Merriweather cut him off. "And I know where you're supposed to be, around back. Now move along before I get someone to move you." The August sun beat down on the concrete. Nobody moved. Elvis watched Sweet Williams's jaw tighten, watched Marcus Reed's fingers curl around his case handle, watched young Thomas Clay stare at his shoes like they held answers. This was Memphis. This was 1955. This was just how things were. Except something in Elvis's chest was screaming that it wasn't how things should be. Elvis had grown up poor, the kind of poor where you wore the same shirt 3 days running and called it fashion. His family had lived in a 2-room shotgun house in Tupelo, where the walls were so thin you could hear your neighbor's prayers at night. He'd seen hunger. He'd known struggle. But he'd never had to enter a building through the back door because of the color of his skin. "Excuse me, Mr. Merriweather," Elvis said, walking toward the confrontation. His voice came out younger than he wanted, but steady. Merriweather turned, his expression shifting instantly to that practiced smile that promoters wore like cologne. "Elvis! There you are, son. We've got about 2 hours until showtime. Your dressing room is all set up. Got some Coca-Colas waiting for you, and—" "These men are my band tonight," Elvis interrupted. That's right, Merriweather nodded, still smiling. "And they'll come in through the appropriate entrance, and—" "The appropriate entrance is this one," Elvis said. "Same one I'm using." The smile on Merriweather's face didn't falter, but something in his eyes went cold. "Son, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but we have rules here. These are good rules, rules that keep everybody happy, keep things running smooth. These boys understand. Don't you, boys?" Sweet Williams looked at Elvis, and in that look was a lifetime of these moments. Of back doors and separate water fountains and being called boy at 40 years old. His expression said, "Don't do this, white boy. It ain't worth it." But Elvis wasn't thinking about worth. He was thinking about his mama, who'd cleaned houses for families who wouldn't let her use their bathroom. He was thinking about his friend Leroy from childhood, who'd taught him guitar licks on a porch in Tupelo, who'd moved north and never came back. He was thinking about every time someone had looked down on him for being poor white trash from the wrong side of everything. "They're musicians," Elvis said. "They're here to work, same as me." Merriweather's smile finally dropped. "Mr. Presley, let's you and me talk inside for a minute." He reached for Elvis's arm, but Elvis stepped back. "Nothing to talk about," Elvis said. His heart was hammering now. "Either they come through this door with me, or I don't perform tonight." The words hung in the humid air like a challenge. From inside the venue, Elvis could hear the stage crew setting up equipment. The echo of microphone tests, the normal sounds of a show being born. 1,400 people had bought tickets. Promoters from Nashville were supposedly in the audience. This was his shot, maybe his only shot, at breaking through to something bigger. Merriweather's face had gone red. "Son, I don't think you understand what you're saying. This is a big opportunity for you. A real big opportunity. You want to throw that away over this?" "I understand just fine," Elvis said. Sweet Williams stepped forward. "Mr. Presley, it's all right. We've done this before. It ain't all right," Elvis said, looking at him directly. "It ain't right." Thomas Clay, the young drummer, looked up from his shoes for the first time. His eyes were wide, disbelieving. Merriweather laughed, but it wasn't a friendly sound. "You think you're some kind of hero, boy? You think you're gonna change the world with this little display? I've been running shows in Memphis for 15 years. I know how things work. You're nobody. You're a kid with a guitar who can shake his hips and make little girls squeal. That's it. You're replaceable. The word hung there. Replaceable. Elvis felt it in his gut. The fear that Merriweather was right. That he was nobody. That this moment, this choice, would mean nothing except the end of his own dream. But then he looked at Marcus Reed, who was watching him with an expression Elvis couldn't quite read: hope, curiosity, disbelief that a white boy from Memphis was actually standing here drawing this line. "Maybe I am replaceable," Elvis said quietly, "but I ain't walking through that door while they go around back. That's all there is to it." Merriweather's expression went from angry to calculating in an instant. He was a businessman, after all, and businessmen knew how to read situations, how to find leverage. "All right," he said slowly. "All right, Mr. Presley. You want to make your stand? You go right ahead. But understand this. You walk away from this show tonight, and I'll make sure every promoter, every venue owner, every radio station from here to Nashville knows that Elvis Presley is a troublemaker, that he can't be trusted, that he puts on airs and makes demands like he's already somebody when he ain't nothing but a truck driver who can carry a tune." Elvis felt his throat tighten. This was it. This was the moment his mama had warned him about, in her way. "Baby," she told him once, "the world's gonna ask you to be smaller than you are. Gonna ask you to fit in boxes that don't fit. You gotta decide what kind of man you want to be." He wanted to be the kind of man who filled the Overton Park Shell, who made records that played on every radio, who gave his mama a house with a bathroom that worked, and his daddy a truck that didn't break down every other week. But he also wanted to be the kind of man who could look at himself in the mirror. "Do what you gotta do," Elvis said. Sweet Williams made a sound in his throat, something between a laugh and a gasp. Marcus Reed's eyebrows went up. Young Thomas Clay just stared. Merriweather's face went purple. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life, boy." "Maybe so," Elvis said. Then he looked at the three musicians. "Y'all got somewhere else to be tonight? Maybe somewhere that'll let us all use the front door." Sweet Williams studied him for a long moment. 42 years old, he'd seen every trick white folks could pull. Seen the ones who smiled to your face and then turned on you the minute it cost them something. Seen the ones who meant well, but folded the second things got hard. He'd learned not to trust easy words or easy promises. But something in this kid's face, something in the way his hands were shaking and his voice was rough, that seemed real. "There's a club," Sweet Williams said slowly, "down on Beale Street. The owner's a friend. He'd probably let us use the space." "How many people it hold?" Elvis asked. "Maybe 100, if we pack them in tight. From 1,400 to 100. From the big stage to a small club. From the bright lights to whatever Beale Street had to offer." Elvis picked up his guitar case. "Then that's where we'll play." "You stupid son of a—" Merriweather started, but Elvis was already walking away. the three musicians falling in step beside him. They didn't speak as they walked to their cars, didn't speak as they drove separately down to Beale Street, to a club called the Blue Room that smelled like cigarettes and bourbon and had a stage the size of a postage stamp. The owner, a man named Roosevelt Banks, who went by Rosie, listened to Sweet Williams explain the situation. His eyes flicked to Elvis, suspicious and curious in equal measure. "This true?" Rosie asked Elvis directly. "You walked away from the Shell?" "Yes, sir," Elvis said. Wait. Elvis thought about it, about all the words he could use, all the explanations he could give. But, in the end, it came down to something simple. "Didn't seem right," he said. Rosie laughed, a deep sound from his belly. "Didn't seem right, Lord have mercy." He shook his head. "All right, you can use the room, but I got a crowd coming in at 9 expecting blues and jazz. You got until then." "That's all we need," Sweet Williams said. Word spread fast in the Memphis music scene. By the time 8 o'clock came around, the Blue Room was packed. Not with the suburban families who'd bought tickets to the Shell, but with musicians, music lovers, people who'd heard that something unusual was happening. Elvis stepped onto that tiny stage with Sweet Williams, Marcus Reed, and Thomas Clay. And something happened that he'd never felt before. These men, who had every reason not to trust him, who had every reason to phone it in and get through the night, they played like their lives depended on it. They played like they were making a point. Sweet Williams's piano made Elvis's voice sound like it was coming from somewhere holy. Marcus Reed's trumpet wove through the melodies like liquid gold. Thomas Clay's drums were a heartbeat that didn't quit. And Elvis sang. He sang like he'd never sung before, because he knew, somewhere deep in his gut, that this might be the last time anyone let him. The crowd went wild. Not the polite applause of the Shell, but genuine, visceral enthusiasm. People were dancing in the aisles, shouting back at the stage, alive with the music. When they finished, Rosie came up to Elvis. "Son," he said, "I don't know if you're brave or stupid, but that was something special." "Thank you, sir," Elvis said. "Don't thank me yet," Rosie warned. "Merriweather's got a long memory and a lot of friends." Elvis nodded. The phone didn't ring for 3 weeks. In the music business, 3 weeks of silence might as well be 3 years. Elvis kept going to Sun Records, kept checking in with Sam Phillips, kept hoping that maybe the show at the Blue Room had meant something to someone important. "I heard what you did," Sam said one afternoon, not looking up from the mixing board. "Heard you walked away from the Shell." "Yes, sir," Elvis said. "That was stupid," Sam said. Then he looked up, his expression unreadable. "But I respect it, for what that's worth." It was worth something. But it wasn't worth a paycheck, wasn't worth a future. The calls from promoters dried up. The radio stations that had been playing "That's All Right" started playing it less. Elvis heard through the grapevine that Merriweather had made good on his promise. Word had spread that Elvis Presley was difficult, that he made demands, that he wasn't worth the trouble. His mama noticed him getting quieter at dinner. "Baby, what's wrong?" she asked one night. "Nothin', Mama," he lied. But Vernon, his daddy, knew. Vernon had that look in his eyes, The one that said he understood what it meant to lose something you'd almost had. "You regretting it?" Vernon asked quietly. "That thing you did?" Elvis thought about it. About the Shell, about the 1,400 seats, about the Nashville promoters who'd supposedly been there, about what might have been. "No, sir," he said, and he meant it. But meaning it didn't pay the bills, didn't fix the truck that was on its last legs, didn't get his mama that house he'd promised her. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon in late September, Sam Phillips called him into the office. "Got someone here wants to meet you," Sam said. The man sitting in Sam's cramped office was black, maybe 50, wearing a suit that looked expensive even to Elvis's untrained eye. He stood when Elvis entered, extended his hand. "Mr. Presley," he said, "my name is John Hammond. I'm a talent scout and producer from New York." Elvis shook his hand, confused. "Nice to meet you, sir." "I was in Memphis last month," Hammond continued. "I'd heard about a show at the Overton Park Shell, thought I'd check it out. But when I got there, they said it was canceled. The kid they'd booked had walked away." He smiled. "I asked around, found out where you'd gone instead. Made it to the Blue Room just in time to catch your set." Elvis's heart was hammering. You saw us play?" "I did," Hammond said. "And more importantly, I heard about why you were playing there instead of at the Shell." He paused, studying Elvis's face. "What you did that day, standing up for those musicians, that told me something about your character. And what I heard you do with those musicians on that stage told me something about your talent." "I was just doing what seemed right," Elvis said quietly. "I know," Hammond said. "That's the point." He pulled out a card, handed it to Elvis. "I work with Columbia Records. We're always looking for real talent, people with something genuine to say. I think you might be one of those people. If you're interested, give me a call." Elvis stared at the card like it might disappear. After Hammond left, Sam Phillips was grinning. "You know who that was? John Hammond discovered Billie Holiday, Count Basie, Benny Goodman. He's the real deal, Elvis. The real damn deal." But Elvis was thinking about something else. "The musicians," he said. "Sweet Williams and Marcus and Thomas. Do you think Mr. Hammond might be interested in them too?" Sam's grin got wider. "Why don't you call him and ask?" Elvis did, and Hammond, to his credit, listened. Over the next few months, things changed. Not overnight, not dramatically, but steadily. Hammond introduced Elvis to people in New York who didn't care about Memphis politics or Clayton Merriweather's grudges. People who cared about the music, about the sound of a white kid from Mississippi who sang like he understood the blues. And whenever Elvis performed, whenever he recorded, he insisted on working with musicians who were the best at what they did, regardless of anything else. It made him difficult in some circles, made him enemies in others. But it also made him something else. Himself. Years later, when Elvis Presley was actually famous, when the name meant something to everyone from teenagers to their grandparents, A reporter asked him about that night at the Overton Park Shell. "Do you regret it?" the reporter asked. "Walking away from what could have been your big break?" Elvis thought about it, really thought about it, about all the twists and turns, all the choices that had led from that August evening to this moment. "No," he said finally, "because it taught me something important. Sometimes the thing that looks like your big break ain't the real one. Sometimes the real one is waiting for you to prove who you are first." "And who are you?" the reporter asked. Elvis smiled. "I'm still figuring that out, but I know." The truth is, Elvis Presley's career didn't end that night at the Overton Park Shell. It was just beginning, in a way he couldn't have imagined. Those 6 words, "either they come through this door," didn't cost him everything. They cost him one thing, the easy path. And in return, they gave him something worth more than fame or fortune, the knowledge that when it mattered, when it was hard, he'd chosen to stand up. In a world that constantly asked him to compromise, he'd found his line. And while history remembers Elvis for his music, those who were there that August night remember something else. The moment a 20-year-old kid chose integrity over opportunity and discovered that sometimes, just sometimes, doing the right thing opens doors you never knew existed. What would you have done in Elvis's position? Drop your thoughts below.